Taylor, and thanks for the invitation to come and speak tonight. I think, as the previous speakers have said, this is one of the most important issues facing us, and I think this is nothing short of a witch hunt inside the Labour Party against people who actually have a record, as Wayne has just said, of standing up against racism, of fighting against fascism. The woman who's been suspended in Kent, Jackie Walker, is somebody who's organised demonstrations, who herself is black and Jewish, and who is being criticised. You may or may not agree with her opinions about black people and about Jewish people, but in my view, you can't say that what she said is anti-Semitic. And I think it is absolutely scandalous that people like her are being suspended from the Labour Party, and that there's this huge witch hunt going on in the media by people who have absolutely no respect for equality and anti-racism, as a stick to beat Jeremy Corbyn and other people on the left of the Labour Party. That is what is going on. And it seems absolutely incredible to me. Two things. One, again, it's already been referred to, that we've had the most racist election campaign in the London mayoral campaign than anybody can remember, certainly since the Smethwick by-election back in 1964. The second thing is, actually, until a year ago, Labour had a Jewish leader of its party. Now, we didn't hear about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party then. Where we heard anti-Semitism about Ed Miliband was when he was eating a bacon sandwich, when they talked about North London geeks, as Jeremy Paxman did, and when he was attacked because his father didn't fight sufficiently during the Second World War. Now that is the real traditional anti-Semitism that we know in this country, and it comes not from the left wing, it comes from the right wing, and we should always bear that in mind. I think we should also understand what a lot of this attack is about. It is about trying to say that if you criticise Israel, if you demonstrate over Gaza, and they're bombing Gaza again this week, by the way, if you do any of these things, then you're not allowed to do this anymore. And they know that in London, we've built, in Britain, we've built the biggest pro-Palestine anti-war movement anywhere in the world, that this is still a very, very significant movement. And what they're trying to do is to weaken the movement. They understand the strength of it, and they want to destroy it. And that is something we cannot allow to happen. And we have to be very, very clear that to criticise Israel, to criticise Zionism, is not anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is an abhorrent form of racism. It's something which, as we know, has been the major form of racism, particularly in the years up to the Second World War, and led to the hideous disaster of the Holocaust. We know that that is the case, and it still recurs. It hasn't gone away, it is still there. We should be absolutely aware that it is still there. But the idea that we should use people's opposition to racism in order to try to say you can't support the Palestinians, I think is an absolutely deceitful lie, which is coming from the Conservative Party, which is coming from much of the media in this country, and I have to say, is coming as well from some of the Israelis themselves. It's not, to my mind, a coincidence that Mark Regev, the man who every single night was defending the bombing of Gaza and the killing of children, every single night is now the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador here in London. And we shouldn't think that these things are not connected, they are. And of course, already, unlike the usual diplomatic niceties you're supposed to have, he's on the Andrew Marr programme, criticising the Labour Party, criticising Jeremy Corbyn, and this, we are going to get more and more of it. And we have to be able to stand up against it. We have to be able to say there is absolute right, and indeed a duty of people, to say what they think Israel is doing wrong in the Middle East. Not just Israel. The main responsibilities for the wars in the Middle East actually don't lie with Israel. They lie with the British and the American governments over the past 15 years. But it's also true that you will not get peace in the Middle East until we have justice for the Palestinians. And that is why people have demonstrated in their hundreds of thousands and their millions over this question. Remember when we had the mass demonstration in 2003, 2 million people on the streets against the war in Iraq, the other slogan was for justice for the Palestinians. That was always part of the same cause, and it has to remain part of the same cause. And you know, corollary of this is, if you're saying that actually people can't criticise Israel, you'll then say the other side of that is that every Jewish person has to be in support of everything that Israel does. Now I know, not just from the Jewish people on this platform, but I know from many, many Jewish people that I know of all sorts of different political persuasions, that is not something that they want to subscribe to. And let's remember what Zionism is about. You know, we often say not all Jews are Zionists, and that's absolutely true. Let's remember, not all Zionists are Jews either. It is a political project. The neocons in the United States have always supported it. Michael Gove, those sorts of people, Rupert Murdoch. You can name a whole number of people who want to support what Israel does because they have a right-wing political agenda and they want to put forward that agenda. We have to reject that idea. And I think when you're faced with a witch hunt, as we are, there is one thing that you cannot do when you're faced with a witch hunt, and that is to run away. There is no point in saying, you know, there's a number of people, obviously, who do say things that are stupid, and very occasionally who do say things that are anti-Semitic, or I think this is massively exaggerated in terms of the Labour Party. But you know, the truth of the matter is, you can't abandon the term Zionism if you want to seriously talk about our history and our politics. You cannot abandon these criticisms. You can't put your head in the sand and pretend it's going to go away. It isn't going to go away. This is part of the way in which the Blairites and the people in the Tories who are backing them are going for Jeremy Corbyn. It's the part of the way they're going for the Palestine movement and the anti-war movement. It's part of all these things. And therefore the only thing you can do is fight back. And that means another thing as well. Do not assume that this has nothing to do with Islamophobia. You know, we talk generally about racism quite rightly. I mean, I find it incredible that in the week when Labour candidates for Mayor of London, who is an Asian, for Bristol, who is a black man in a city most associated with slavery, a descendant of slaves who is now the Mayor of Bristol, are we really saying that people in the Labour Party are so consumed with racism over another group of oppressed people, the Jews, that they are willing to behave in this sort of way? It seems to me it's absolutely illogical. But also, this talk about anti-Semitism, we know what the not-so-whispered thing is, that this really comes from the Muslims. That it really comes from the Muslims and their allies in the hard left. That's what they're trying to do as well. So it's another way to try to divide and rule. It's another way to say that people can't unite across race, across religion, in the way that actually people are all too capable of doing. So I just want to conclude by saying that really, it seems to me when you're faced with this witch hunt, stand up and fight against it. That means we all unite. It doesn't matter what background we come from, it doesn't matter what politics we have, it doesn't matter about any of these things. If we care about fighting racism, then it isn't about saying there are a tiny number of people who are anti-Semitic inside the Labour Party. It's about saying there is an agenda going on here which is reinforcing racism, and Sadiq Khan needn't think he's free of this. Now he's been elected and they're all being nice to him for the next few days in the Evening Standard. That will come back to haunt him. We know, because we know what the basic racist agenda is about. So it's about defending the Muslims and defending the Jewish people. It's about defending the refugees. It's about organising in these kinds of ways in order to fight back. And if we organise both inside the Labour Party and outside the Labour Party, then we can win over this issue. But we have a huge fight on our hands, and we need to be aware how serious this is and how big the stakes are. Thank you.